Next on Ebert and Roeper.
You're under arrest.
The movies that made us wish we just stayed home.
Da Vinci.
It's the worst films of 2006.
I failed as a wife and a mother.
Time once again for our annual extravaganza of awfulness. I'm Richard Roeper. Filling in for Roger this week is the film critic from the Chicago Tribune, Michael Phillips.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
Welcome back, Michael. Let's get right to the countdown of shame.
All right.
Okay, my number 10 pick is How to Eat Fried Worms, and I can tell you how I'd watch How to Eat Fried Worms again, and that would be at gunpoint, and maybe not even then.
Eat it.
At number 9, Flyboys. It's inspired by the true story of the brave Americans who flew for the French before the U.S. officially entered World War I. But the real inspiration for this film seems to be every bad B movie ever made. This is a veritable roll call of war movie cliches, including James Franco as a rebellious cowboy named Lane Rawlings. That sounds like a good porn star name. And Jennifer Decker as Lucienne. She gives a bad performance in 2 languages.
It's not good for me to like you.
Speaking of cliches, my number 8 pick is The Guardian. It's Top Gun meets an officer and a gentleman and says, hey, let's pretend nobody's ever seen Top Gun or an officer and a gentleman.
I'm here to exceed your expectations, Senior Chief. I'm a rescue swimmer at heart, born, bred, and water-fed. Hoorah!
Wow, I bet you practiced that all morning.
Okay, this movie kept ending, and Michael, I kept getting out of my seat, and then the movie would keep going, and then we finally got to the real ending, which is like the worst ending in the history of endings.
The opposite, I think, for me with Flyboys, which is a movie I'd forgotten about, and I was actually forgetting it while I was watching it. That, to me, was the evils of CGI incarnate. You know what I mean? All that computer-generated flying sequences to CGI.
You know, sometimes you have the most noble intentions, but it just turns into the most mundane of junk.
Right, right. Okay, Sharon Stone and her mysteriously smooth Zamboni forehead. Star in Basic Instinct 2, number 10 on my list. Here Stone repeats her 1992 role as crime novelist Catherine Trammell, who gets her homicidal act together and takes it on the road to London.
Maybe Dr. Glass is right and we should be alone for this.
Catherine, I strongly advise you not to contemplate...
Stop. Is this where we're going to do it?
At number 9, I have Failure to Launch, starring Matthew McConaughey as a swinging yacht salesman. Gee, I'm rooting for this guy already, who refuses to move out of his folks' place.
You live with your parents?
Is that a problem?
I don't have a problem with Adam Sandler, at least to the extent I have issues with Rob Schneider. But number 8 on my list is Click, the year's weirdest mixture of comedy and pathos. Sandler plays a workaholic architect given the gift of a magic universal remote.
Making of?
Clicking.
Is that my parents? They're making you. Get me out of here!
When the story goes for the emotional jugular, you may feel like you're watching some Terminator version of It's a Wonderful Life. This thing really, really bugged me.
Yeah,
bad, rancid tasting.
When Adam Sandler tries to have it both ways, wacky comedy, scatological humor, and then he cries, and we're supposed to feel bad for him. That's deadly. And you know, Failure to Launch, I thought McConaughey did a nice job in a movie towards the end of the year called We Are Marshall, but for about 5 years there, all McConaughey's been doing is playing, you know, the Burt Reynolds of his generation, and the idea of him living in his parents' basement and being a loser, but the whole time he's kind of like, I'm gonna take my shirt off now, you know? I mean, you don't believe it for 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily need the same kind of rooting interest in all romantic comedies, but yeah, you want on some level to feel like the writers have done their job, getting these 2 characters to the point where you want them to get together, and I was, I don't know who I was rooting for.
And it's yet another one of those movies, Michael, where everybody at the end is watching the 2 main characters, and they break out into applause, because you know that happens so often in real life when the couple finally gets together.
I've had it with that myself.
All right, coming up next, some more big names in some really bad movies as we continue counting down the worst films of 2006. The Chicago Tribune's Michael Phillips and I are scraping the bottom of the barrel and digging up the worst films of the year. At number 7 on my list is The Shaggy Dog. It's a remake of the 1959 comedy about a man who turns into a sheepdog, and you know what? The original was lame, and this so-called update is even dopier. Tim Allen, who seems about 20 years too old for the role, phones in his performance as a workaholic dad who's bitten by a dog and gradually turns into a dog just like this movie. At number 6, I have a Christmas combo that's deadlier than a piece of rotten fruitcake washed down with a glass of congealed eggnog. Deck the Halls and Unaccompanied Minors. Now, Deck the Halls is a jaw-droppingly unfunny ripoff of Neighbors and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, with some of the most predictable and tasteless gags in recent movie history.
Who's your daddy? Oh, God, I'm your daddy. I'm your daddy. I'm your daddy. Ah.
Even worse is Unaccompanied Minors. Picture the Breakfast Club with kids, set in an airport with all the humor and charm surgically removed. Now, next is a movie I reviewed with Roger back in May. In fact, I remember it as if it happened about 8.5 months ago.
Thumbs down.
Yeah, I have a vision of the future, Roger. We're doing our show on the worst movies of 2006, and right about the number 5 slot, I see Just My Luck. Now, Lindsay Lohan's off-screen follies have the ghost of Judy Garland saying, "Slow down, girl," but can she act? Well, maybe, but not in my number 5 pick, Just My Luck.
Oh, wow. Ashley?
Now, Lindsay Lohan is barely out of her teens. Pretty soon she'll actually be old enough to go into a nightclub and try an alcoholic beverage. But in Just My Luck, we were supposed to believe her as a 20-something business exec blessed with incredible good luck. And then she's cursed with bad luck, just like everyone who had to see this piece of junk.
Yeah, grim film. First the appendectomy, and now worst 10 on Roeper's list. Unaccompanied Minors, one of the worst. It really felt like a layover more than a film to me. That was rough going.
Nicely said, my
Yeah.
friend.
Anyway, at number 7 on my list is My Super Ex-Girlfriend. Uma Thurman, straight from restrained attempt at broad comedy in The Producers, here plays a superheroine who turns into a raging PMS bull when dumped by boyfriend Luke Wilson.
You are breaking up with me.
No, Jenny, it's not you, okay?
At number 6 is The Hills Have Eyes. In terms of snuff films that shouldn't have gotten by with an R rating, this one barely beats out Mel Gibson's Apocalypto.
What?
I found her, and she was like, it looked like somebody cut her open, you know.
My number 5 pick, Dougal, takes bottom honors as the worst kids film of 2006.
I can fly! No, I can't.
Actually, Dougal is just a retitled, redubbed version of a British French film based on the British kids show The Magic Roundabout, which was taken from a French series. Maybe the Norwegian version will work.
Well, that sounds interesting in no way whatsoever. Now, we talked about The Hills Have Eyes, and you and I a couple of months ago on this show talked about a documentary called This Film Is Not Yet Rated.
That's right.
And regardless of the merits, or I like the film better than you did, but the issues it raised are the same issues we've been talking about forever, that Roger's talked about for years, and that's that the ratings board has this thing where if there's nudity and sexuality, they run for the hills, but you can tear people limb from limb, you could have blood spurting out of open, gaping wounds, and you'll still get an R rating. And The Hills Have Eyes is so ugly.
Yeah, and I really worry about audiences today kind of getting this bad idea about what a horror film should be, which is not sadism, it should be suspense.
Yeah, well, they're splatter films more than horror films.
It makes me crazy, and we're way out of step with the whole rest of the world on this.
Yeah, well,
there
that's true,
too.
too.
Yeah.
You got it.
When we come back, multiple Oscar winners stoop to new lows as we count down the worst films of 2006.
You're just determined to have a bad time, aren't you? You're trying to seduce me, Diane?
No.
No?
God, no.
Is that why you came up here in the middle of the night?
We're counting down the worst films of 2006, and for once, counting down actually is the right way to put it. And at number 4 on my list is Fur. Now, Michael, you and I look more like the real-life Deanne Arbus than Nicole Kidman, who is terribly miscast in this stylized, self-congratulatory, and mostly fictional account of the 50s housewife who became a legendary photographer. Robert Downey Jr. is covered in fur, and we're covering our eyes as Kidman shaves him inch by inch.
I like it.
Now, if you think Robin Williams doing white guy hip-hop shtick is funny, congratulations on waking up from that coma you've been in since 1986. For everyone else, my number 3 pick is RV. It's a played-out slapstick farce that shamelessly steals from National Lampoon's Vacation, and that's 2 films on my list that have ripped off the Vacation franchise. You know a movie's in trouble when they release a small animal in tight quarters.
Raccoon! In the oven! Don't open it!
At number 2 on my list, the most depressingly sadistic movie of 2006, The Hills Have Eyes. I don't know what you do when you walk out of a movie like this. Do you go to dinner? Do you grab a drink with your friends? Do you just yuck it up on your way out of the theater? I just don't get it. I felt like I needed a Silkwood-level shower to wash away the exploitation.
It's no fun to pick a low-budget indie for one of these worst-of surveys, but a little film called London really is bad enough for inclusion, and it ranks on number 4 on my list.
Oh, yeah.
The protagonist is a pathologically jealous cokehead, everybody's favorite kind of cokehead, who crashes a going-away party for his ex-girlfriend, played by Jessica Biel, who has already moved on to greener career pastures.
He's gone, and I feel like there's nothing I can do to ever get it back. Do you know how painful that is?
Yeah, I do. I cried for weeks when we broke up.
Some memoirs leave you humming thanks for the memories, but no thanks. My number 3 is the year's most fraudulent-seeming memoir, Running with Scissors. Despite a cast featuring Annette Bening and that Zen master of underplaying, Alec Baldwin, my vote, by the way, for Times Man of the Year. Augustin Burroughs' story of growing up gay, tormented, and eventually adopted by his mother's therapist comes off as a phony. How phony? I bet even an audience made up of gay, misunderstood adoptees of their mother's shrinks might have trouble relating to it.
I really don't see myself in you at all.
I'm more like my mom. I want to be special and I want to be famous.
So dull, The Con of Man. Ranking as the second worst movie of the year for me is The Da Vinci Code, which grossed $750 million and proves that people were just going to go to that movie no matter what. Tom Hanks and his hairstylist, who are no longer speaking to each other, teamed up to portray a Harvard symbologist who discovers the truth about Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
He did this himself in his own blood?
Is it possible?
This is a message. Your grandfather left you.
He left us. Professor Harry.
Demons, omens, codes, monks. Da Vinci.
Director Ron Howard, who has made some good movies too, handles the Dan Brown story with deadly earnestness. The pacing could have used a little more Bourne identity and a little less greatest story ever told. I mean, this film... you liked it, no?
Yeah, I kind of liked it. I liked it enough to give it a thumbs up.
Thumb was up.
You know, it was just barely up, but I thought Sir Ian McKellen kind of elevated it with his scenes. And you know, all you guys get all obsessed with Tom Hanks' hair. That became a story before the movie ever came out. You see a lot of bad hair in a lot of great research laboratories and college campuses.
Yes,
so get away from his hair. Forget about
all right, enough of the hair. The film is slightly flawed in other ways, too. And also, if I have a list here of the Opus Dei members, Richard Roeper's on here.
Well,
so
see, there you go.
I think that may have something to do
you and
with
Carrot Top and Gallagher now using
with your
props
apologist
in your humor, my
stance
friend.
for this deadly...
Okay. Well, let me tell you something. Let's talk a little bit about London, the independent film that you put on your list. And I agree with you, Michael. Normally, when we're doing lists like this, it's like, okay, I don't want to pick on the independent small films because those people, you know, they put their heart and soul into it. But there are so many movies like this, these indie films that are so self-pleased and self-congratulatory and so self-consciously artsy. You know what? That's just as offensively awful as something like RV.
I mean, money aside, you know, you can find wonderful things on that budget level. And this, to me, was just, I feel like I'm still watching.
And the whole thing played out like some sort of film school fantasy about getting the girl back, where you wonder if the director or the writer or somebody involved here had a similar case and they said, I'm gonna make a movie where I get the girl to come back to me.
Jessica Biel survived that, and she's turning into a good actress, I think. I mean, she's good in The Illusionist.
And I liked her in Home of the Brave as well.
Yeah.
Okay, coming up next, we make our picks for the worst of the worst of the worst films of 2006. Okay, we're almost done putting the worst films of 2006 out to pasture. As Roger Ebert likes to say, it takes some truly talented forces to create a memorably bad film. That's certainly the case with the worst film of the year, Running with Scissors. I don't think you liked it either. This screeching, annoying, and painfully artsy piece of crapola was directed, written, and produced by Nip Tuck creator Ryan Murphy. The people involved with this film all have talent, and they left it at home each and every day they were filming Running with Scissors.
What are you guys doing?
He's repressing a memory. We need to go deep into his subconscious mind.
Awesome.
Virtually every character in this movie is crazy. Not authentically crazy in the mental illness sense, but movie crazy. That means they're creative, they're outlandish, and they're colorful. When Running with Scissors tries to be funny, the gags fall flat. When it tries to be serious, it's unintentionally funny. When it tries to make us care about the characters, we're long past the point of caring about anything other than running for the exit with or without scissors.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, it does not matter how true or how false the events of this picture are. I mean, it's based on a memoir. Every second of it feels false and contrived and pushy and
just a complete train wreck. You know, I caught a movie on cable recently. It's about 10 years old, called Sleepers, and there were a lot of questions at the time about the non-fiction memoir on which that was based. But as a movie, it's an interesting piece of work, regardless of whether or not all the things really happened here. As you said in this case, Michael, it doesn't matter if it's all true. As a movie, it's all correct.
Right. There's such good actors, Brian Cox, Alec Baldwin.
I think there's actually a law that Alec Baldwin has to be in every movie in 2007, so we have that to look forward to.
That's right. That's right. Here it is, the year's toughest slog, something that makes the Da Vinci Code look like Run, Lola, Run. In All the King's Men, Sean Penn steps into Broderick Crawford's shoes as Willie Stark.
But listen to me, you hicks. That's right, I'm not the only one here. You hicks, too. They fooled you, too, just like they fooled me 1,000 times.
The shoes don't fit, but he's not the reason the movie goes south. In the first minute of this Ambien remake, adapted from the Robert Penn Warren novel and directed by Steven Zalian, narrator Jude Law lies on his bed listening to his own voiceover drone on and on while the rain beats down and the James Horner music pounds you with actual death knells. Hey, terrific. Thanks for the warning.
Well, you know, you mentioned Jude Law, and Kate Winslet is in this movie again. We're talking about really talented people, Michael.
Anthony Hopkins.
I do have a theory, though, that all British actors at some point have to do Southern accents in a movie, and all Southern actors at some point have to do British accents in a movie. But to his great and grand credit, Sir Anthony Hopkins, I think, must have realized he was in a dog, maybe at the very beginning of this movie, because he doesn't bother with the accent. You know what, screw this, I'm Sir Anthony Hopkins. I'm British. Yeah. Nobody ever talks about it, but he just doesn't sound like anybody else.
Deadly. Good writer, Steven Zalian, but he directs like he's never seen a film. I mean, this thing to me, it felt like time was actually going backwards, and I don't mean in the flashback way. I mean, it was tough.
It's such a mess, and this is one of those films where, when it was first announced, you thought, okay, 3 years ago, this sounded like it might be an Oscar project, and then it sat around for about a year, and they kept talking about things like reshoots and new endings and things like that. And that's never good when a movie sits on a shelf. It's
and the old version, the 1949 version with Broderick Crawford, it's a good book. It's not really a great American classic, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't age that well.
But that film is actually much tougher-minded about the Willie Stark character. This guy, it's like, he's a messiah, he's a hero, and then a little bit of flaws.
Well, and you talk about heavy-handed. I mean, the Gandolfini character playing the shady political operative, when Sean Penn turns on him on stage at one point and humiliates him, it's not enough to embarrass him. The guy actually has to fall off the stage and land in the hog slop, just in case you didn't get.
And that was so funny in RV.
There.
I love that scene in RV too.
Okay, we'll be back to recap our complete list of the worst films of 2006 right after this.
Closed captioning for Ebert and Roeper is sponsored by
Stupid! You got a boot on the car and you're about to get one in your butt. Sorry, Cal.
That was a scene from Little Man, one of more than 20 films that weren't screened for critics this year. And I know every year when I do this show, Michael, people say, what happened to this movie? What happened to that movie? Well, in this case, I didn't see it. I mean, there were movies like Big Mama's House 2 and Saw 57 or whichever number in the franchise. And they didn't screen them for us. So the reason they're not on the worst of list for me is simply because I didn't have a chance to see how bad they were. Because in almost every case, with a few exceptions, if they don't screen it for critics, you got a turkey on your hands.
Although it happens just often enough where a good one sneaks, a movie the studio does not know how to sell, sneaks in there, and sort of the no screen policy thing. And I think the studios are cutting themselves, a bad deal.
To me, it's like, what? Show us the movie. And I always do feel bad for the directors and the producers and the writers and everybody who worked on a movie that they're not even going to show it to the critics.
It's worth a shot. And God knows the field of criticism has just exploded exponentially with the internet. And there's so many more people who potentially could. I'm not saying help the film in a commercial way necessarily, but at least get a reaction.
Find something good to say about it.
Get some reactions.
At least get it into the discussion, because as soon as you see that review appearing in the Saturday Sun-Times or Chicago Tribune where it says this film was not screened, so then you just send the reviewer or the reporter out anyway, and then the bad reviews come the next day. So I don't know how much they really do to protect so much the film anyway.
I'm with you all the way.
Okay, recapping our lists of the worst films of 2006. At number 10, I had How to Eat Fried Worms. At number 9, Flyboys. The Guardian at number 8, Shaggy Dog at number 7. Number 6, A Combo Platter, Deck the Halls and Unaccompanied Minors. At number 5, Just My Luck. Number 4, Fur. Number 3, RV. Number 2, The Hills Have Eyes. And for me, the worst movie of the year was Running with Scissors.
Such a wealth of choices there. At number 10 on my list was Basic Instinct 2. Number 9, Failure to Launch. Number 8, Click. Number 7, My Super Ex-Girlfriend. Number 6, The Hills Have Eyes, with you right there. Number 5, Dougal. Number 4, London. Number 3, Running with Scissors. Number 2, The Da Vinci Code. And number 1, All the King's Men.
You know, and occasionally, Michael, when I look at a list like that, I think maybe if they combined a movie, if RV drove into The Hills Have Eyes, if the, you know, that might be a possible.
It still breaks my heart that Mel Gibson didn't get a crack at Da Vinci Code, because I think there just would have been blood all over the Louvre, you know?
Okay, next week we'll be back with reviews of new movies, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Gentle enough for the tenderest lips. New Gentle Scents. Serious moisturization. Hypoallergenic. Discover Blistex. Discover what your lips are missing.
If you have a cold and high blood pressure, you should know decongestants can raise your blood pressure. Take decongestant-free Corsedin HBP. Powerful relief that won't raise your blood pressure.
More people are starting their day with new Plum Smart from Sunsweet.
I'm starting.
Plum Smart has fiber and nutrients to help keep your digestive system healthy and in balance. Start smart with Plum Smart.
Net Zero gives you the fastest surfing available over dial-up and virus protection, starting at $9.95. Try it risk-free for 30 days with our money-back guarantee.